Hi, welcome. My name's Dale McCluskey, and on this video, I want to respond to by way of Robert Cabral, who's a very popular balanced dog trainer. And in terms, again, what's happening in the dog training world, certain trainers such as Robert Cabral, Ivan Belanov, and others who are, putting themselves in the middle of this back and forth between, Zach George, who identifies as a force-free dog trainer, and other trainers who are in this type of ideological war, as I would call it, who are attempting to call each other out. And this statement put out by Robert Cabral, and this goes back a few months ago now, but I want to really talk through some of this to help those who are looking for answers, who are looking around the dog training world on social media, looking at what I call the train wreck that represents the current state of the dog training world, who are looking at certain situations. And again, I go through my Flipping the Script series. I'd encourage you to watch it as I go through various situations, such as, say, the bonker situation as a example as to what is happening. Certain situations as an opportunity, as a individual, okay, to step back, apply some critical thinking, and consider, what is the source of the problem. Again, I'm very clear as to what the source of the problem is. It's this very popular idea, okay, that training is a learning-based exercise once a relationship problem is already underway between the dog and owner. Again, I talk about the problem by way of how trainers such as Cabral and others are superficially, right out of the starting gate, motivating dogs to respond while assuming, because understand this is the whole thing about trainers who are just trusting that those responses, okay, typically it's a sit down, come and stay. Understand all these trainers are, aligned with the same idea of things, that those responses can be trusted that way, okay, right out of the starting gate, using treats, using, something to motivate a dog to respond without, okay, considering, well, why that would be a problem. And again, when I talk about the why part of it, once you start to look at just how common it is, okay, for people to end up with a bad result, okay, that dogs moving around fantastic at times in the training environment, in other, environments where, it's tied in that way through using, say, a treat or something to motivate a dog to respond. A dog can do a great sit, look fantastic at times responding, but, seems to be, a contradiction. It seems to be disconnected. This is where even the statement comes from. Well, my dog is pretty good, except. I mean, that's a really common response or statement that that dog owners will make even when they contact me. And the whole pretty good part, because this is something to really understand about the deceptive nature of appearances. And again, this is why I tie this into, okay, the parenting example. Okay, you start to, as a parent, you start to really frame this up in terms of the social, okay, aspect of the relationship, depth of relationship, okay, connecting dots properly, which I understand these trainers don't do that, okay, understand this is the problem. They do not connect dots by way of how a dog's decision-making process is governed, at that level based on the social interplay of that connection. They don't do that. They don't put response into context because there's no depth, okay, they don't do that. And then once you start to, look at the problems, okay, this is the thing. I really encourage people to look at, how disconnected this picture is for so many. You're spending your time, your money, going to trainers. It feels really good. You get to reward your dogs like 5 minutes into a relationship problem. Just think about that, okay? Because I'm going to line this up. Feels really good. The dogs look good. Feels good, and then after, okay, coming out on the other side of a process, only to discover you're still dealing with the whole laundry list of behavioral issues that haven't gone away. This is so common, but there's a reason for that. Okay, it's not because it's the dog's fault. I understand that's a default setting. All these trainers, well, the genetics of the dog. You hear all the excuses, and take your dog to the vet. You end up with more of an expense, but no answers. Okay, dog on medication next. Just masking the problem, not fixing anything. Locked into a managing a problem situation, and you may absolutely love your dog to a level will say, well, I'm just gonna, this dog's just the way that they are. I'm just gonna put up with it. I just have to be careful as to places I go or what I do. And you're always the whole relationship. You're unsettled. Okay, it's not good. Okay, and then you get blindsided, something bad happens, and then you're in a real bad position. But understand that this is the state of the dog training world, and it's all part and parcel of this inherently flawed idea. I talk about this. I go through it. And it's the hardest thing for trainers to accept or even to confront because, understand it's so easy. Okay, this is a culture now. Understand that because this is, when you consider you have both these groups playing into this, aligned with this idea, the training's a learning-based exercise. You have force-free trainers, you have balanced dog trainers. They're all wrapped up in this. Then you start to understand why it seems normal to blame dogs. Okay, it seems everything becomes normalized. It's totally dysfunctional. Okay, but this is the level we're at, and people really, I mean, you look in, and this is the whole thing about social media, getting these trainers. You may say, "Oh, I like Cabral," or "I like a certain person," and then it's based just on liking people. It's not based on what the truth here. I have a bad outcome. And so understand, you want to go through my Flipping the Script series, my intent, my goal is never to, you won't hear me, if you watch my videos, you'll hear me getting involved in like cheap shots and getting personal. Many balanced dog trainers do that, okay? If you pay attention, they get really nasty with anyone who challenges. And don't get me wrong, that challenge side of things, in terms of clarity as to what the real issue is, that's not going to happen through force-free anyway, or balanced anyway. So you see this whole divisive thing happening in the dog training world. Now, again, I talk about what's the solution, okay? Again, I talk about taking the path of what training is, just like the parenting example. Once a child has become selfish, it's not a learning-based exercise, it's an intervention. I mean, that's just common sense. And if you were to do what these trainers are doing with just motivating a response, once you hit that point in the relationship, you should expect, okay, that the response on the response side of things, that those aren't going to represent the change is happening. I mean, and then the whole issue about bribery, I talk about that. Well, when does bribery become bribery? Well, bribery becomes bribery when you fail to connect dots, right? You have an ongoing relationship problem, and you're just superficially motivating response that way. You're not tying it in. You're not connecting dots by way of your role. Okay, you talk about a social contract. You talk about the parental role, absolutely critical. Okay, and then those two core ingredients I talk about, influence and control. Okay, they have to come in the right way, just like how parental influence. Okay, just so everything, all the words when I talk about, dogs as social animals, it parallels almost exactly. But here's the challenge and the problem is that when you get this level going on, and you get this level of people like really just twisted up in this stuff, and their whole identity is part of this ideology. It's a type of belief system that to shake people loose from it is a major issue because now it's almost like there's too much to lose. But then you get this whole thing about ethics, right? And there's the thing that all the hypocrisy and all the I talk about all the false narratives. So trying to market this as some sort of ethical process, well, you can't reconcile that based on what the process itself does, what it represents, how it sets up the counterfeit picture for so many. So it's morally bankrupt. Okay, understand that this is all part of it. You talk about all the confusion, all the divisiveness. This brings it on. Okay, because it's not based on truth. That's what I call it's the big lie. And so this goes into this whole thing with, and get Cabral here came out and made this statement. Understand this is in the middle of this Zach George back and forth. Zach George, trying to call out the dog daddy, Okay, I talked about that. If you were to be selective, if I was to pick, okay, as a force-free trainer, who would be the one person that I would probably pick to really make a lot of hay when it comes to, the optics of, of a certain trainer? Well, it'd be the dog daddy, okay? Certain reactions of dogs, right? You're gonna want to play off of that. Well, that'd be the guy. So, everything happening in the dog training world is very intentional. I understand that trainers are really trying to play off of certain things to try to further their own agenda. It's like Zach George, all agenda driven. But here's the problem, and this plays into this whole thing about Cabral's statement here about science has no place in dog training. Okay, I talk about the ability to call out the real problem. It's not going to happen through balanced training. I mean, that's the first thing that people need to start to understand, because balanced dog trainers, they're tied into this idea that training's a learn-based exercise. This is where they made statements of, balanced dog training is more science-based. Well, think about that statement itself. It's referencing the 4 quadrants, okay, building off of more science-based. But no, when you understand that the actual, concept itself, the core tenet of learning through its application, is inherently flawed based on the path it takes, based on motivating dogs to respond the way I described, based on, minus the core ingredients that come in through, a intentional interaction-based method. I talk about that. Then you start to understand that building off a flawed idea doesn't, firm up or kind of auto-correct it. Okay, it doesn't do that. So balanced dog trainers, they're compromised. People have to understand that they're compromised, but here's at the same time they're playing both sides of the fence. Okay, and that's the other thing about you hear balanced dog trainers trying to play the victim card here. Well, they played both sides of the fence, been doing that the whole time. This is where, again, when you talk to a balanced dog trainer, if you ask them, well, what's your methodology? You go watch the video I did, Nikki Butler talking about what balanced dog training represents, talking about treats and clickers, right? Oh, we do that. Well, yeah, they want to come off that way because how great is that? You can play both sides of the fence. You can play this ideology that way, and I talk about what's more dangerous than an outright lie. It's a lie with some truth in it. So when you talk about influence coming into this, into balanced dog training, yes, some level of change can and will happen, but trust me, balanced dog trainers, they're superficially focused on response the way I described. So to even qualify, the level at which dogs' perception are changing, it's lost in translation, so to speak. Just understand that the further you go away from what a process is, that door opens wider and wider and wider by way of perception of dogs not changing. Okay, understand this all ties in. So this goes into this whole thing about science. Science has no place in dog training, which is a total contradiction statement based on what balanced dog trainers have done. Okay, based on how they're tied into this idea, the 4 quadrants. Okay, understand that the only difference with balanced dog trainers is they're trying to reconcile the role of influence by way of a process that is based on appearances. Okay, it's based on changing the focus of dogs. I talk about the role of influence as well in terms of intercepting dog's state of mind, the moment that controls and manifesting. See, I don't even use behavior. Balanced dog trainers, they use that word behavior. It's like something doesn't belong. Well, that word doesn't even belong within the framework of superficial response. Typically, you're just getting a dog to respond in a superficial way. That's not behavior. Yeah, that's a response. So understand that, everything that comes from and through this superficial idea of things lacks any depth. Okay, and these trainers use certain words to try to firm it up, and this is the problem. Okay, the core ingredients are missing that way. I talk about that. So I'm going to play some of this video because again, this statement that came out, is just another point of confusion. It's totally a total contradiction. And all this is, and you have Cabral doing up T-shirts, and he's wearing this here, and mugs, and selling stuff. It's so, it's so disconnected. I mean, you talk about ethics in the dog training world. These trainers just keep pushing this, because I guess there's money to be made. It's very easy to be popular because it plays off of certain dynamics by way of, when a dog owner is entering into a process, their emotions, to be able to reward a dog right away this way. Understand there's certain things here that both sides have played into, and to the detriment of dogs and owners. So really, I mean, understand, you can connect all the dots here in terms of why dogs end up getting blamed. And so balanced dog trainers, they've been playing both sides of the fence, but they're caught in a catch-22 situation. You wonder why they're losing their tools and they can't defend it or they can't push it back because they can't call it out. You can't call out something that you're in agreement with. Just understand that. This is why when I talk the way I talk, and I talk about what training is and isn't, well, guess who gets equally offended? I take as much heat from balanced dog trainers or more so, and that's the point. And then look how massive the problem is. If you really start to connect the dots here, and this is where, again, I do that. This is where I went on the Miracle Canines debate, and I went through all of it. It's not fun information, and people don't want to hear it, but it's the truth, okay? And then look at all the inherent problems in the dog training world. See, that's the amazing thing to me. All these trainers, it's like they don't even want to admit it. Like they're in denial. It's like they just want people to ignore it. They hope people will ignore it so they can keep marketing this garbage. That's all it is. So I'm going to play some of this video, stop along the way, just to, again, make the whole point that this statement is totally contradictory. But it's like, and this is what balanced dog trainers are trying to do here. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to say, well, we're different. Science has no place in dog training. So but no, if you look at what their doctrine is, okay, what their core tenet is, what their marketing, what their, whole foundation is, okay, it's based on this learning-based ideology. That's it.
All right, guys, welcome to the live. I'm super glad you're here. I know we've had a lot of people coming over to this page from other sides, and I want to start out by saying I want to thank Zach George.
Okay, there it is, right? It's like, and you see other trainers trying to do this, like Ivan Balanoff, others say, oh, they want to build bridges, right? And this is where the statement comes from, like there's more than one way to train a dog, right? And even, think about this, balanced dog trainers, right, giving force-free trainers what I call an ideological hall pass, right? They say, oh, well, they can train dogs up to a certain point, or they're pretty, well, they can't call it out. Here's the difference between someone like Cabral and other balanced dog trainers and myself. Okay, years ago in Canada, I mentioned this before, I was invited to sit down at the same table as, force-free, like clicker trainers. I refused. I just called it out right then, and I did it in a way that didn't come off as, abrasive or rude, because I explained why, and so I stepped away from it. I said, no, this training's not a learning-based exercise. But balanced dog trainers, they don't do that. So you understand that they're, so here he's inviting in, right? Saying, I hope, somehow we want to make common ground here. See, that's a deception. Well, their common ground is the fact they're tied into learning. Like, people have to understand what's going on here. So, Cabral and people they're tied into this idea. They've accepted it. They didn't go in as individuals initially and start to look around and say, oh, look at why are these problems happening here? Even if one dog is taking the hit, everything, the presses need to stop. That's real empathy. Okay, that's about real ethics. To say we need to identify what is the problem here. See, all these trainers never did that. So I don't care what they say on social media. They never asked the questions. They weren't willing to make that trade-off. To say let the chips fall where they may. If it means I have to, I'm going the right way here. Let the chips fall where they may. These trainers never did that as individuals. Just understand that. So here he's inviting like Zach George. That's interesting.
Zach's been posting so many questions to me and has tagged me, so many of you guys who are here.
So Zach came on a bunch of my videos here a while ago. I just shut it down. I didn't shut it down away, but I just said, this is it. Not learning-based exercise. And he just went his way. Right? But here's the thing. This whole thing, like these two groups, they're married to each other. They're married to this idea. it's like a family fight, but they're still part of the family. Understand that.
To start with, I want to welcome you for being here if you came over from maybe a different idea, a different ideology, because we can all work together. There's no...
See, that's the deception. Like there's no truth, right? The truth is subjective. I showed no, there is truth, okay? This idea that training's a learning-based exercise is based on a lie, okay? That's not true at all. And look at all the inherent problems. So this whole thing about, see, this is the problem, right? And so, balanced dog trainers, you wonder why they're losing their tools and they're getting kicked off the fence, because this idea, this ideology, by way of force-free, okay, force-free trainers have the ideological high ground based on what this idea, how it's presented, how it's applied, what it represents. Okay, understand, this is why balanced dog trainers, they don't get it. But they're losing tools, and then as society, right, attitudes of society play into this too. So, because even society isn't getting any clarity as to what training is.
Really should be no divisiveness. And I think that's one of the first things I want to focus on is that
saying there should be no divisiveness. So by default, based on what this idea represents and based on what balanced dog trainers are trying to bring into it, you can't reconcile it. So there's going to be divisiveness. Understand, see, this is the thing that you have to understand. See, and that's the problem here. You have to understand what this idea truly represents. Okay, what, and the problems. And then you have to understand dogs in terms of as social animals. Okay, you have to understand, I talked about the core ingredients, what a process really is. Okay, there's the difference. You have to connect dots.
That this is not a way to divide people, but a way to bring people together. That's
okay, there's no coming together
really
here.
The most important part of this message. I was looking back on my Bound Angels YouTube, and I started that 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I uploaded the first video. And
so I'll go back here too, because I want to add, like I said, I want to just hit some of these talking points here. This has been on a slow boil since back with Skinner and Pavlov. Understand behavioralism. I show that. I wrote a book a few years ago called The Mind and Body Connection. Go into Pavlov's research notes, right, where they had to remove an assistant out of the superficial experiment, okay, observation based, because the dog was like drawn to, wanting to connect with, right, social. There's your first clue that, this wasn't going to end well, okay, because dogs were never studied the right way. Just understand that right from the beginning. So, we talk about, 15 years ago, it's this whole thing, let's just all kind of get along. It's almost like and so this has been on a slow boil. Okay, it's always been a problem. I understand this is based on a lie from the beginning. And so it's just you can see it escalating, but at some point it's going to really start to unravel. We're at that point now. Understand that everything you see in the dog training world, so you're even seeing infighting amongst balanced dog trainers now. You're seeing them going after each other. You saw the Jeff Gelman situation. It's really a good example of that. You saw balanced dog trainers along with force-free trainers piling on to Gelman. Okay, that's interesting. So it's convenient, right? And you see balanced dog trainers calling out other balanced trainers. All the confusion as to, and this gets into the optics of certain reactions of dogs. The ability to even have clarity as to what represents abuse is lost in translation through a superficial idea of things, right? To be able to even move through a relationship problem comes through depth. There's no depth in this process. Understand that.
And Bound Angels was my nonprofit organization, the organization that I started because of my passion for saving dogs. And I will never digress from that. I will never, ever, ever go away.
Here's the thing. You could have, again, you go into it and have a heart for saving dogs. But if your ideology isn't right, okay, if your foundation isn't right, it doesn't matter. You're going to encounter what's going on right now. And then your ability to be able to, to connect dots properly, if you really want to save dogs, to be able to reverse course truly comes through a proper foundation. Okay, understand. I'm not just speaking about Cabral. I'm talking about balanced dog training in general, or especially force-free. Okay, it's all the same. So it's about the right starting point. I talk about that.
Away from that has been my mission since the day I started, and that will be my mission until the day I die. So anything I do.
So here he's trying to what he's trying to do here is trying to offset all the stuff going on. And that's what trainers will do. Whether they have a backdrop of trophies, behind them. That's why I don't market a certain way. I just don't. Or they say about where their heart is at. It's like trying to distract away. Okay, let's focus on what the real issue is here. This is why traders, I talk about virtue signaling. A lot of trainers out there will call out certain situations of abuse, right? Which is totally ridiculous based on the fact that they are continue to market while they're doing this at the same time. They're marketing the very ideology that dogs are ending up being blamed in shelters, all the confusion. So it's like, see, that's the whole thing. It's like, get it right. Like that should be your most important, focus. That's what is generating all the problems. So if you're calling us, then your motives are going to be in question right away. They should be in question. Say, okay, this person is, saying, okay, I'm going to call out these certain people, but at the same time, they're pushing the very garbage that's causing all the problems with dogs and owners. See, that there's the problem.
Anything I say, anything I believe in, anything I fight for is for the good of the dog and the people that love those dogs.
Okay, and again, can't reconcile that statement based on what balanced dog training represents. That's it. Just understand that. So people can look at whatever trainers they want, but understand that that's the bottom line here with all of this.
I've spent, obviously, at least 15 years in shelters helping them.
Okay, and I'll do some videos in shelters. Trainers going in, and Cabral's one of them, with treats in their hand. Okay, I talk about the problem with that. They go in engaging through using treats, using motivating agents. Dogs are in there because of a relationship problem, and they're trying to portray that these dogs are a certain way. Okay, based again, I talk about the themes of bribery, accommodation, negotiation. That's faulty right there. Understand that, again, this goes into everything. Understand that, you're walking in, it's just like a parent. Their parenting style, that it's set. That's their default setting. So I don't care. Trainers going into shelters or whatever. It's again, if it's really the goal here is to save dogs, is to put them in a better place in terms of the relationship. The actual process itself, okay, has to align. That's it. And I show very clearly it doesn't through balanced dog training, period. They're going in with treats, right? And so are force-free trainers. There's the videos out there, Zach George going into a shelter in Alaska, treats in his hand. And then balanced dog training is doing the same thing. What's the difference? There is none.
To better save dogs, to better understand dogs, and to give dogs a fighting chance. Today's live is entitled Science Has No Place in Dog Training. And I said this a while ago because not that I don't believe science has no place in dog training. I believe science has no place in dog training.
Well, what the heck is that? Like I said, right? It's a total contradiction. Like trying to split hairs here. That's what happens. Like trying to find a way, right, to work this out, to like have your cake and eat it too. Separate away from it, right? Like think about that. You can't.
Training. And I'm going to explain that very, very succinctly and very clearly and very passionately.
Okay. You can watch this whole thing. This goes on for an hour. He doesn't explain, okay? I'm just putting it out there. You can't. It's impossible to separate away from it. Understand, this is what these trainers try to do. They try to say oh, science has no place. Like they're trying to pretend that they're different, even though they're not. And this is where, think about what I'm saying. Balanced dog trainers, right, self-proclaim themselves as experts all the time, all over their social media and their web pages, their websites, right? They market themselves that way. They're experts. Force-free trainers do the same thing. How can you even do that? Like how can you even reconcile that alone? Like if they're supposedly doing something different, well, they're not. See, that's the problem here. There's so many things. Understand, there's so many things. I talk about a lot of it on my Flipping the Scripts here. There's so many things that you need to pay attention to that's going to point directly towards what I'm saying. And so here it's the same thing, trying to say, well, trying and see you can't do it. You can't tear away from this. Like that's what they're trying to do. Say balanced dog trainers have the answers. They're different. Trying to distinguish that their science is somehow more adds more weight to or brings more truth into a lie. I talk about what's the most dangerous lie of all. Well, one that has some half truth in it. And that's what really balanced dog training is. Okay, it's bringing influence into a certain level by way of what's called the four quadrants, trying to firm up, within the framework of response, right? Having a kind of an awareness that, well, got to have some level of control or leadership, right? But when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, it does not bring it in. It can't. It's impossible to bring it in through how you're motivating dogs that way. It doesn't work. It doesn't take the path of again, talk about a interaction base. That's the only way it can happen through. Taking the level of a power play, but speaking the right language. Okay, dogs come into agreement with. So again, maximizing agreeableness, keeping a level of challenge at the lowest possible level. But here's the thing, you can see it. I connect the dots here. But here you have Cabral trying to somehow repackage this to make it work out. You can't. So I'll leave it here. You can watch this it goes on for an hour, but this is a situation where this is all part of this back and forth between Zach George, other trainers all trying to generate some sort of social media presence. That's really how I see it. But never, you won't hear any of these trainers talk about the real issue because they can't. I mean, understand that. They can't even whisper it because of what they've already sold out to. And people have to understand they're not giving refunds here. Okay, understand there's no going back. A lot of these trainers are not going to walk any of this back. I'm putting out information for dog owners, for perhaps new trainers that are looking around. But I encourage you to take note because this is like walking in the dog training world. And you look around and say, oh, hey, balanced dog training. Hey, I got a ready-made idea. I got a support group because the majority, right? And so you feel like you're part of something. But trust me, it's a bad deal. Okay, if you want to look at yourself in the mirror, you want to get in this whole issue of all the hypocrisy, all these contradictions, blame shifting on the dog. It's going to seem normal. It's not normal. Okay, understand that. You'll see it. It's all inherent to this. It's going to happen. If you're a balanced dog trainer or force-free trainer, you're gonna be part of it. And I would encourage you is to break free from it. Understand that training is not a learning-based exercise. The dog training world's in a mess for a reason. All these statements come out for these trainers. Science has no place in dog training, and putting it on coffee mugs and selling it. It's a joke. It really is. So check out the information I put out. It's very specific. My Flipping the Script series, I go through all of it or a lot of it, connect dots. But my encouragement is to apply critical thinking. Ask the questions these trainers never asked as individuals going into it. They didn't look around, look at all the problems. They had an opportunity to do that. Don't want to do it. Just keep pushing forward and understand this is going to hit the wall. Understand this is all unraveling for a reason. All this stuff here, just like this. Science is no place. All this divisiveness, no clarity. And then here is what? It's going to take 1 hour to go through and try to explain away. Like, no, can't do it. Okay, just, and don't take my word for it. Pay attention to how they talk, the words they use. They sound just like a force-free trainer, but they're trying to come off like somehow they're different. They're not. They're the same. They're tied in. They're married to this, okay? This is why the dog training world's in the state that it's in for a reason. Thanks for watching.